Hello everyone. My name is Elise. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing so good today. We are doing what I think might be my first ever sit down recommendation video, which is wild because I've had the channel now for almost a year and I've never done one, and I feel like they're a staple of BookTube. So here we are. I am doing one. Yay. This video, as you've probably already seen from the title, is all about weird books. Weird books, okay? I feel like I've been seeing a phenomenon maybe, around BookTube of people being into quote unquote weird books. Now, weird is subjective, so who knows what that really means. But I do think there is this idea that people are wanting to be a little bit more experimental or avant-garde with their reading and enjoying that kind of surrealist, bordering horror, just funky vibe. I feel like that's catching on at the moment and lots of people are into it. So I thought I would do a list of some of the books that I think are weird for different reasons, and we'll get into those categories a little bit later, but have really enjoyed. So the criteria I was using for these books are all of these I have read within the last 3 years, I think. I wanted them all to be fresh because who knows what I was thinking before then, if I would still feel the same way about those books. So I wanted them all to be fresh. And all of these are books that I really enjoyed or loved. So if you use star ratings, these would be 4 or 5 stars only. Anything under that, well, I had a ton of other weird books that I still liked and would recommend to certain people that would be under that. I didn't include them here. So all of these very much loved and read in the last 3 years. So hopefully that means that this list is carefully curated and we can go ahead and start getting into the categories. The 3 categories that I'm going to be placing these books into today are weird premises, number 1. So this is where just the overall premise from the blurb is just weird off the bat. So you know there's going to be something strange going into it, probably some surrealist take or maybe even a satirical take that is based in reality, but a smidge is out of reality. So weird premises is going to be the first category. Second category are weird endings. So where the shit just goes off the rails and you weren't expecting it and it went fucking loco. So that's the second category. And then the third category is the weird all around category. The weird, but we like it category. So those are 3 categories I'm going to try and list things into, and we will go ahead and get into it. Now I will say on the jump, I'm not going to have the physical books here with me. I'm just going to put the pictures up. Part of why I haven't done these videos in the past is all of my read books I have to keep in my basement, and they're in boxes. I know, sad, because we just don't have room to put them out on the shelves. The books that you normally see in my videos are my TBR, which is huge, I know. But yeah, so my read books are tucked away very gently, most of them at least. So I'm not gonna bother getting them out for this. So we're gonna look at pictures, yay. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the first category, which is weird premises. All right, so there are 3 books that I have listed for this category. The first one is Nothing to See Here. This is by Kevin Wilson and it's published by Echo. I feel like this has had a resurgence lately of people reading it across BookTube. I read it when it initially came out. It was the first Kevin Wilson I ever read, and I do want to read more from him. But the premise of this one, as you might be able to tell from the cover, is a woman gets asked by an old friend to come help nanny their children, basically to be an au pair. They're going to move in with them. And this family is sort of in low-level government, so they need to keep up appearances and are very busy. But the catch is that the 2 children that she'll be looking over spontaneously combust when they have intense feelings. So that's the premise, already very weird, slightly surrealist. And this book is fantastic. It's very much a found family type of vibe. It tackles poverty in the rural South. It looks at politics in the rural South. There's just so many interesting themes going on here, but overall the tone is quite light, almost like a TJ Klune plus type of vibe. You know what I mean? So this one is very good. Highly recommend. If that premise sounds interesting to you, definitely check it out. It's a good one. Next up, we have Mother for Dinner. This is by Shalom, Auslander, and this one is published by Riverhead. This is a satire, and it follows a family of cannibals. Now, this book treats cannibalism or cannibals as its own ethnicity. So it acts as if it's a genealogical line. And this family are one of the last cannibal families in the world. So this book follows one son in particular whose mother is about to pass away. And it is tradition in their family when a parent would pass away that they intentionally try to gorge themselves to become larger so that their family can eat them. And that is the setup of this book. Now, it is a satire, so it's trying to tackle a lot of different themes in a unique and interesting way, which I think it's pretty successful at. I did really enjoy this. This is definitely one where you like want your thinking cap on a little bit, but the premise is really intriguing. It's not gory by any means. It has a very dark comedic tone, and I wouldn't say this goes into horror. It's firmly in like satire, so don't be afraid of that if that is feeling scary to you. But yeah, it's got a bunch of different family dynamics. It talks about kind of cultural heritage and the ways that some people want to move away from that and some people don't, and the tension that that can bring. So yeah, it's really interesting, and I think this one is worth checking out. Now, the last one that I'm going to put in this category is Mrs. Caliban. This is by Rachel Ingalls, and I have the Faber edition, which is the one that you're seeing here, because I think the other editions are a crime against humanity. I hate the other cover. I know other people will love them, but I hate it. So I love this Faber edition. And this is a very short book. It's a novella, and it is about a woman who is a very discontent housewife. It takes place in the 50s, I think. I think it takes place in the 50s. She is listening to the radio and hears that this amphibious creature is on the loose, and everyone is required to call the police if they see it. Now, this creature ends up knocking on her door and asking to hide away in her house, and she agrees. Basically because she like has nothing to do and is bored and needs something in her life to keep her going. And their relationship spawns from there. It is a romantic relationship, but honestly, more than that, I think she's just looking for connection. Like, it's also very platonic in some ways as well, like looking for an emotional connection that she does not have with her husband. And even with friends, she's struggling to find it with friends as well. So yeah, this is a great little book. Also a weird premise because she is having a relationship with an amphibious man, but it's really, really well done. I think it tackles a lot of issues of that time realistically, and very much appreciate it. This one also does have a wild ending, so like it could even be in the next category, but yeah, it's a ride, man. You will not be able to put this one down, and has so much great information about the struggles and the mundanity of life that you can have as a housewife. Not everyone has it, but that you could have when you were forced into that role when you didn't want to be, and some of the struggles that go along with it. So that is Mrs. Caliban. Okay, now we're going to move into the next category, which is the weird endings category. So it just went somewhere, like sending it. Who knows what the author was thinking, but I was down for the ride. So the first one that we're going to have here is Pew by Catherine Lacey. This is published by FSG. I read this one at the very end of last year. It was one of my 5-star predictions. I did very much enjoy it. And this is all about a character named Pew who appears one day in this Southern conservative town. It's very evangelical fundamentalist type of Christianity, and that's really prevalent in the US. And they are sleeping on a church bench or pew, and thus the community names them Pew and decides to take this person in. But they cannot tell what gender this person is, what ethnicity this person is, how old they are. They're very androgynous, and this causes a lot of tension in the community because the community keeps wanting to project certain identities on them to understand how to classify them or how they should treat them. Now, while that might sound like a weird premise up front, it really isn't that strange. It's the ending for me that makes this really weird. And this book is one of the most unsettling books I've ever read. It's not horror by any means, but it's very unsettling. I was impressed at how the author was able to build that tension throughout the entire book. And it's all leading to this festival that you don't really understand what is going on. And it's a religious festival that they do every year. And you're leading up to getting to go to the festival. And then everything kind of happens at the end there. So that is Pew. I hope you're intrigued and I hope you check it out. Next weird ending is Nightbitch. This is by Rachel Yoder and it's published by Doubleday. I love this cover. I sprung for the hardback because I loved the cover so much and I did really enjoy this one. This is about, again, a mother, a housewife who used to be an artist, and it was basically decided that she would stay at home to take care of their new baby because she made less money than her male partner. So she basically has given up a lot of her life and a lot of what she considers to be her identity in order to be a stay-at-home mother, and is very discontent over it. It gets so fucking weird. The end was crazy. I could not believe what I had just read. It whoa. The end is bizarre, but it definitely stayed with me. So I will say that. This one has a lot to do with motherhood, obviously, a lot to do with art, what it means to be a creative person and a mother at the same time, and almost like mommy culture, like momfluencer culture a little bit. She lives in a very pristine neighborhood. There's sort of like a group of other moms that are in like a pyramid scheme over, like, what do you call them? Essential oils and stuff like that. So it has a lot to say about mommy culture in general that I think is really interesting. But yeah, this one does get pretty violent. So know that going in. I mean, she thinks she's turning into a dog and that goes places for sure. But this one is really just like a crazy ride. It's almost like a think piece type of book to read. So if that sounds interesting, definitely check out Nightbitch. And the last book that I'm going to put into this weird endings category is Our Wives Under the Sea. This is by Julia Armfield. It's published by Picador, and this was everywhere last year. One of my favorite books of last year. And this one is all about two women who are married. Their names are Leah and Mary, I believe, but don't quote me on that. And one of them is like a marine biologist, I don't know, something to do with the water, and goes on a submarine mission that is supposed to be 6 weeks, and she ends up being stuck down there for 6 months with a small crew of other people. Now, back at home, her wife has no idea what the hell has happened to her. Basically, she's just gone missing. She can't get any information from the company that sent them on the mission. For all intents and purposes, she thinks she's died or is missing and is like not coming back. Then we get to the 6-month mark. Her wife comes back and her wife is different. She's not the same wife that left. Kind of ominous. that's the setup, but this ending is so strange and in the best way. I've talked about this before, but for me, this book is all about like an extended metaphor for trauma and the ways that that can physically and relationally manifest in your body. I think it was fascinating and really just a character study about this relationship and this marriage with lots of surrealist elements that are going on in between. So yeah, love this one. Highly recommend. The ending is chef's kiss. Definitely love it. Okay, now the rest of the books are just the weird all around category. Everything about it is weird. Every which way is weird. We love it. So this definitely is the biggest category. I want to say I have like 7 books maybe for this category, so I'll try to get through them pretty quickly. The first one is a very popular one. It's Vita Nostra. This is by Marina and Sergey Dyachenko. It's translated from the Russian by Julia Meitov Hersey. And the sequel just came out for this. I did read it and it was also great. It's published by Harper Voyager. This is about a magical school, but it's very dark. This girl, her name is Sasha, gets recruited by this man, this mysterious man, to start performing strange tasks for her. And whenever she does the task, she throws up gold coins. And little does she know that those gold coins are to get her admission to this school of special technologies. You don't know what that means. She doesn't know what that means. Nobody knows what that means. I still don't know what that means, okay? And I've read both the books. And she is forced into going because if she does not go, her family is threatened. They say like bad things will happen to you and your family if you do not go. And let me tell you, they mean it. So she goes on this adventure and you're sort of exploring to figure out what special technologies is along with her. It is one of those books where you do not know what's going on. You're confused the whole time and you like it. You just like it. I don't know what to tell you. So this one is great. So many people love this. I think this has a ton of wide appeal. It's not only great character development, but also a really interesting world. I think you just get swept up in it and I love it. So definitely check out Vita Nostra. I also loved Assassin of Reality, which is the second one that just came out. So read both. Now, next one we have up on here is Weasels in the Attic. This is by Hiroko Oyamada. It's translated from the Japanese by David Boyd and it's published by New Directions. This was the third Oyamada that I had read and this is my favorite. And this is a collection of 3 short stories. It follows a family who's dealing with infertility and it is very bizarre, like wacky. It's called Weasels in the Attic because the middle story is about a weasel infestation that happens in their friend's attic. So it does this really interesting thing where it juxtaposes their struggle with infertility with another couple who's like kind of like their best friend couple in a way that is having a baby. So you see their stories alongside each other and it does some really interesting things with that. Kooky is where it's at with that one. So that's Weasels in the Attic. Next up, we have a short story collection called That We May Live. This is by various authors, various translators. They're a collection of Chinese speculative short stories. This is published by Two Lines Press. It's one of the Calico editions. I've talked about it so much before. Oh my gosh. But it is so good and it is so weird. Like freaking bizarre. You definitely have to like speculative fiction to get into this because it's everywhere. But yeah, I just loved it. One of my favorite stories was about a news anchor who is struggling with aging. And it's a huge commentary on beauty, especially beauty culture in China and the types of beauty standards that they have there. She also has learned to modulate her voice. So she has a really interesting presence over camera, trying to hold on to her power as much as she can. Really, really interesting. Loved it. So many good stories in this collection. Next up, we have one that has a very weird form. but it's there throughout, and I think it's great. And that is Maps of Our Spectacular Bodies. This is by Maddie Mortimer. This is published by Scribner, and this is a multi-perspective story about a woman who has cancer. One of the perspectives is from the cancer itself in her body, and that is done in a very experimental way. So there'll be times where the words are bigger or smaller on the page, where they're like jumbled all up together, where they're like cascading down the page, or it'll be like a poem written really lyrically. Very fascinating. I think the ways that it interjected the inside of her body kind of competing with the outside of her body, very, very well done. And you also get the perspective of her husband and her daughter as well. This one is very heart-wrenching. It was so realistically portrayed. I think this cycle of grief and the cycle of regrets and trying to encapsulate your life into all these memories that you have of yourself. This was written by Maddie Mortimer because her own mother was diagnosed and passed away with cancer. So I think she did just an amazing job of being able to translate that to the page, and definitely recommend this one. I mean, it was nominated for the Booker Prize, so you don't need me to tell you it's good. We know it's good. Okay, next up we have Mrs. March by Virginia Feito. This is published by Liverlight, and I am on this bandwagon where I consider this book horror. But let me tell you, this is about a woman who is, again, kind of a discontent stay-at-home mom. There's a lot of those going on here, I'm realizing. She starts getting obsessed with this news story of a murder, or a disappearance maybe, that has happened, and starts questioning whether or not her husband is involved. And it's very fever dreamy, it's very delusional, like you never really know what's happening. She's a very unreliable narrator, and it is so strange and wonderful. It really does feel like you're hallucinating, and I think it's great. So check that out if it sounds interesting. All right, and I think we're up to our last two. So penultimately we have Lakewood by Megan Giddings. This is published by Amistad. This is horror, and it is so good and so fucking weird. I loved it. So this is all about medical testing. So our main character gets a letter saying that they have the potential to try out for a medical test that would give her lots and lots of money, which she desperately needs because her grandmother has just passed away, and her grandmother was the main breadwinner for their family. Her mother is ill. You're not quite sure if she is physically or mentally ill, or both. And she needs money ASAP. So she goes to the initial trial to see if she's eligible, and she does make it. And that sends her to this town called Lakewood, where she must live for a certain amount of time in order to go through all of the testing. Progressively weirder and weirder things happen in this town. It is so horrific. This is horror, and it is definitely horrific. There is one scene in this that is like, it has stayed with me as just like so abruptly violent that I can't get it out of my head. And I think it's really well done. It's all about generational trauma and systemic racism, and the ways that the government has treated Black people disproportionately, specifically around medical testing, and the horrific things done to that community. So I think it does a brilliant job with it. Highly, highly recommend. So good. Love, love Lakewood. And lastly, we have an oldie but a goodie, and that is Sula by Toni Morrison. Now, I have this edition, which is the vintage edition, and I really love these editions. And this one, I don't think people realize how strange it is going into it. It is very dark. This, again, has one of the darkest scenes that I have ever read in a book. If you know, you know. There's actually two really horrific scenes in this. This is another one where it's like, I'm confused, but I like it. So maybe that's what this section should be called. It's about Sula and one of her best friends Some may say close enough to be sisters, and just the vastly different paths that their lives take. She is definitely an outsider, like a black sheep. It's her coming of age story. It is intense and very bizarre. So highly recommend all of these. I know this video is so long, so I need to wrap it up, but I love all of these weird books. Please let me know what weird books you love down below. And if you've read any of these, do you think I put them in the right category? Do you think they're weird enough? Give me your input. And with that, I will see you all in the next one. Bye.